Hey y'all, so we're here on the second video of our test to determine what liquid is going to lock and keep an axe head handle locked together for the longest period of time. So we're going to go ahead and see. It has been 48 hours and I checked on these at 6 hours and then at 24 hours. And I'll go ahead and give you a rundown. We're going to start here on this side. We've got just the plain water. So you can see it's good and swelled. No movement whatsoever. At 6 hours, just plain water was locked. So this is waste motor oil. It is still not locked. So you can see that it will still slide on there. That is after 48 hours. All right, now we've got kerosene. Kerosene, still not locked. All right, so moving on to boiled linseed oil. All right, boiled linseed oil, still not locked. Raw linseed oil, still not locked. All right, moving on. This is glycerin. Glycerin or glycerol, plain, still not locked. We've got glycerin mixed 50-50 with water. Still not locked. All right, now we've got dipropylene glycol. This is mixed approximately approximately, well, this is 100% right here, locked. That was not locked at 6 hours, but it was locked at, no, I take that back. The straight dipropylene glycol was locked after 6 hours. All right, dipropylene glycol mixed with water. Go ahead and compare and see what the difference is. So these have both been locked since 6 hours. This is a substance that is about 1/3 water, 2/3 dipropylene glycol. This is polyethylene glycol. It is locked. The straight polyethylene glycol, let's see, was not locked at 6 hours, but it was locked at 24. Polyethylene glycol mixed with water, that's locked. All right, and the polyethylene glycol mixed with water was locked at 6 hours. All right, now we've got the propylene glycol. Propylene glycol straight is locked. Propylene glycol mixed with water. Again, these are about 1/3 water to 2/3 propylene glycol. Now, the propylene glycol were both locked at 6 hours. All right, so ethylene glycol, antifreeze. Locked, but I felt a little bit of a movement. This is ethylene glycol mixed with water. That is locked well. And it was, all right, the ethylene glycol at 6 and 24 hours was not locked, and now it is. The ethylene glycol mixed with water was locked, was not locked at 6 hours, but it was locked at 24, and of course it still is. All right, straight ballistol oil, and it is not locked. All right, ballistol mixed with water, and it is locked. And it was locked at, ballistol with water was locked at 6 hours, and of course 24, and still is. Swell lock. Swell lock, which is probably dipropylene glycol mixed with water, was locked at 6 hours. All right, we've got tung oil. Tung oil, still not locked. All right, Danish oil, still not locked. Okay, so what we're gonna go ahead and do is actually, I don't think that we need to soak this any longer. I think that the 48 hours is going to give us an idea of what is locked and what's not. If you were doing an axe head, you might want to leave it a longer soak, being that there's just more wood and more distance for it to penetrate, as well, especially if you're not using a bucket where you're submerging, say, all the way to the top of the head. If you're just, have like a half an inch and you've got your axe handle head set in it, you might want to leave it for a long period of time. I think we're going to go ahead and call this, just because these dowels are small enough that it's getting enough time. I am suspect that if we had just left, if we continue to leave this motor oil, the kerosene, or these other ones that are not locked on, that maybe they never would. Maybe that's just not getting enough swelling to the wood to actually make it swell. So that is something to keep in mind. And one of the reasons why I say that is because when you can look actually at the wood on these, this being the ballistol, it has the discoloration of the ballistol all the way up to the top side. So whatever part of it was going to migrate, it has migrated through it. And that's the same thing here for the motor oil. The kerosene, you could even see a few minutes afterwards, it was migrating all the way up. So it's just, for whatever reason, it's not getting the swelling into the wood. So that's actually very interesting proceed so far, and something that is kind of good to keep in mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove all of these from their liquids, and I'm just going to leave them on this board in their respective places, and we're going to let them dry, and we're going to go ahead, we'll check back. Okay, so it's been 5 days since we took them out of each liquid, and I've just been making notes. I've been making notes on any changes in basically the looseness or what we're looking at, and there really hasn't been much. So we went ahead and we didn't shoot video until today. Today was the first day that we had a real big change, and that is the fact that the one soaked in water actually loosened up. You can go ahead and see here. So now we are in Alabama, and we're in August, and so we have had, I won't say that we have had dry weather, but we've definitely, what that may be. It's like what it would be just in the natural environment. So the coarse waste oil was not locked, the kerosene was not locked, the boiled linseed oil was not locked, the raw linseed oil was not locked. Now we come to glycerin, and glycerin is an interesting note because the glycerin with water, actually the following day, it was not originally locked. The glycerin with water actually 24 hours later was locked. Basically meaning it absorbed, the glycerin pulled more moisture into the wood after 24 hours. Here's even more of an interesting note. After 48 hours, the glycerin without water was locked and remains locked. So both of those are two very interesting points to make, and we might want to revisit in a future video. Now the dipropylene glycol, which my bets are now on, still locked. Polyethylene glycol, which if you recall took the longest to get locked, is still locked. Propylene glycol, one of the faster ones to lock, both locked. Ethylene glycol or antifreeze, without water still locked, with water is locked. The ballistol oil, of course, was never locked, and it is still not locked. Ballistol with water, and it actually has a little movement. All right, so it does not have a lot of movement, but I can just barely move it. So swell lock, which is basically the dipropylene glycol, still locked. And of course the tung oil and the Danish oil were, neither one of them were locked. So I'm going to go ahead and call it for this update, and we will revisit as soon as we have another change. Okay, so this brings us to the end clip on this test. And I say it's the end, but I'm going to go ahead and leave the ones that are still locked on, and I'll do an update video eventually. So make sure to subscribe or ring the bell so that you get notified when those kind of videos come out. What I want to go ahead and go over is tell you, I've left these basically out for a month in the July weather, each of these plugs. And then I went ahead and took them in and set them in front of my air handler return, basically to simulate, you know, a very drying atmosphere. And these have, I didn't put any exterior wax or oil on these. Check out probably a video that's coming out very soon where we're going to be doing a test to see like an axe handle wax compared to like pine tar, boiled linseed oil, that type of thing, to see what difference those makes. But for right now, let's go ahead and go over. So at the end of the month sitting in front of the air handler, there were really only 4 of these items that are still locked. And I say 4, but really only 2. Really only 2 of the chemicals have managed to retain their locked product. And the thing that I found most interesting, so I'm going to go ahead and show you here. I'll slide this on and off. The water, you can see it was one of the first to go. And I'm going to be putting up waste oil, kerosene, boiled linseed oil, raw linseed oil, and there's a little resistance there, but I'll be honest with you, the main reason that the raw linseed oil got some resistance is just because more of the product built up. Glycerin with water. This brings us to the dipropylene glycol, which was the fastest to lock, well, one of the fastest. I'm going to put a table up so y'all can see the time frame and what we're looking at. Still super locked. The dipropylene glycol without water, still locked. Dipropylene glycol with water, still locked. The polyethylene glycol was slower to lock than many of the other products, and I'm assuming that's, you know, even after I took them out of the liquid, which is really weird. It actually locked afterwards. So I'm assuming that the hygroscopic property allowed it to get into the wood and then continue to absorb moisture out of the air and retain it. So without water, still locked. With water, still locked. Now we're moving on, got the propylene glycol. I thought initially it would be good, not so much. With water, propylene glycol without water, not so good. Ethylene glycol without water, ethylene glycol with water. So initially I also thought that it would retain better, and that is an old tradition. I mean, a lot of people will soak their axe heads in the ethylene glycol. I don't necessarily know that it is, you know, that I think that is not necessarily a proven thing anymore. All right, ballistol oil without water, ballistol oil with water. Swell lock. Now here's an interesting thing. The swell lock, y'all know, I expected it to do better because it was probably the dipropylene glycol mixed with it. I don't know what made it do that it did not do well. Maybe it's not propylene glycol or dipropylene glycol. I have no idea. Tung oil, not so much. The Danish oil, again, the Danish oil actually, if I put that chart up kind of, you'll see that it actually did seem to absorb some water after a period of time and then maybe hold it a little while. I don't know, even after it was out of the liquid, I don't know. It could have just been like the others, that it was almost a physical, instead of being a physical swelling, that it was a, you know, like almost like a glue. But anyways, so that is going to be the wrapping up on this. Do be watching out for those other videos coming out, both an update on these. I'm going to continue to kind of leave these out by the air handler and just see how long they actually can retain that water or that moisture in a swelled position in this wood. Something I will point out is it is very much confirmed. I would never recommend soaking an axe head in water. You can just see how much of it swelled up, even up here, and then it got dimpled down. So basically causing it to be way worse than it would have been in the first place. So definitely do not do that. You might could, and in our test that we're going to be doing on the on putting the exterior finish on these, I'm mostly going to be using water, and then just like putting the wax on the outside. So we're just going to see, being that the water was really the least effective and one of the fastest to gain and to lose, one of the least stable, I thought that it would be kind of a good one. And I may do a second one on maybe one of the mediocre ones, or maybe I'll do one of the dipropylene glycol with some of the coatings, and just literally see how long we can retain that moisture into the years, hopefully. So make sure, subscribe, check out our other videos. God bless each of you, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video.